has such a powerful story. When we were starting this series of Limitless, I asked Nicole, Elijah's been sharing about the limit of our response to loss and the limit of our mindsets and different limits that we have to overcome to fulfill our purpose, to live out what God's called us to do. And so for this final series, this final day in the series today, we really felt like we wanted to talk about our response to tragedy, because there are tragedies that hit us in our life, but it's a difference of the response and how we handle it, and how do we be prepared to handle tragedies that are going to come to us. And so I asked Nicole, I was like, would you ever share your story, allow us to share the video, and just share what God's done in her and now what he's done through her? And so Nicole came to Change, earlier this year, very beginning, right after Christmas, right?
Yeah, right after January.
Yeah, January. She and Cliff came, and she came right in. Miss Debbie met her with a hug, and she was like, I found you on social media. We were like, yes, I love social media. But seeing what God's done in her family and the restoration that is continuing to happen in Nicole's life is such an inspiration to all of us. And so, Nicole, I just want to maybe start, if you want to embellish anything that happened in your story, maybe where you got to at that point where you clicked the button and said, I want to give my heart to God. What led up to that in your story?
Yeah, so as you saw, when I was a kid, I didn't have a normal childhood. I had an alcoholic father who was abusive, not just to me, but to my siblings, to my mom. I had to watch him, several times withholding my siblings, just watching my mom take these beat downs, and I was the next in line. So I didn't know much. I've probably blocked out a lot of it, but it allowed me to, it forced me rather to grow up very, very fast. I had no other way to do that because I was fearful for my life every day. Yeah. And eventually my parents divorced, but then my mom moved out of the country. So I was just in every place of resentment. But then I had to, what does this look like for me now? But then I lived with my grandmother. Throughout those years where we're leaving, and we would go to my grandma's house. So she was this safe space for me. She always had been. So it wasn't a foreign place for me to be. It was a safe haven for me. So she raised me up from 13 and on, and my mom's in another country and living her life, and but I did felt abandoned. I felt abandoned my whole life. So here I am, okay, well, now I got to live with my grandma and start a new school, and this is, starting over again. So as time passes, she's taking care of me, she's cooking for me, she's making sure my uniform, because I went to a Catholic school, was ironed every day, and but eventually she took a turn for the worse, and she developed dementia. And if you know anything about that, you don't know who you are. So she didn't know who I was on certain days. So I wound up, the person who took care of me my whole life, I had to take care of her. And then it got to a place where I could no longer take care of her because I wasn't equipped to deal with that type of disease. And I found myself alone again because they had moved her to Virginia and with my uncle, who they could care for her. I had to find my own apartment. I was working 3 jobs, just in this place again of, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta figure this out. But it got so bad to a point where I'm just going and going and going, and I remember just cowering and just saying, why does this keep happening? I'm only 19. I've stopped I didn't even apply to colleges because I was taking care of my elderly grandmother. So, I had to just take care of me. And I just said, forget it, it's not worth it. So, that wasn't the first time that you saw in that video that I thought maybe my life wasn't worth being here. So I attempted to take my life when I was 19 years old, and I have the scar to prove it. And that was a very long journey for me. of surgeries and things so I didn't, lose nerve damage and things. But here's how God works. I was in my apartment, and a friend of mine had a key to my apartment, and she always just came in to check in on me. I had a dog, and she wanted to make sure, I worked a lot of hours. So if she hadn't come that day, I wouldn't be here, because she just, she took care of getting me to a hospital and so forth. So that was God's first move of saying, you're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
So I then go into the next couple of years, I meet someone, I get married, because I think, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. And, I repeated exactly what I went through in my childhood. I married someone who was an alcoholic, unbeknownst to myself at the time. He was very abusive, verbally and physically. And I have 2 small children at this time now. So I just said, I have to get out of here. And now I have 2 kids with me. But I got to start over again. So this is a pattern I watch my life go over and over and over. So I'm now in a condo, and and my kids have to start a new school, and it's like, why is this happening? Just why? Help me understand why this is happening. But I kept working. I was busy. I didn't want to think about it. So then some time passes, and I didn't want anyone in my world. I didn't want anybody in my space. I said, this is okay. Maybe things are all right, And then I meet this amazing man who, if any of you know Cliff, my husband, he is the most gentle person you could possibly meet. He's very tall and intimidating, but he is definitely not that person. He is, he loves with an unconditional heart, and I was a mess. I was a disaster, just staring him in the face, but he didn't back down. He said, I'm going to step in, and I'm going to treat you the way you're supposed to be treated. And because my whole life I'm thinking, I don't have this father figure, but then this guy wants to be nice to me. I'm like, well, what are you being nice to me for? He's like, because that's what you're supposed to do. So he took on these 2 little kids on top of it and showed them a father figure that they did not have. And, now we had our own 2 children, Olivia and Xavier, and, they're just amazing. But now I have 4 kids who, that's a lot in itself. So 2 kids with a lot, 4's even more. But we all get here to church on time, like Ashley said earlier.
I am so impressed by that. Every time Cliff and Nicole walk in with 4 kids on time, I'm like, how do you do it? Like, my kids are running out the door, jammies, like all sorts of things.
Well, so this time that we're together, I'm still just really broken. I have a lot of scars, and I have a lot of past, just baggage, and it didn't matter. It was, hey, why don't you pray about that? God sends me this godly man who wants me to pray about things, and I'm thinking, do you know what I've been through in my life? Like, this is not going to work. So anyway, we get to this point now where we're just living life and everything's okay, and then our world kind of comes crashing down on us, just simultaneously at that. And just when I think everything again is okay, we lose our jobs, and it was at no fault of our own. It just happened to be a reduction in staff, and we're packing up our house. We've lost our house now because we can't find employment. We have 4 kids to take care of, and we're packing up boxes. I don't know where we're going to go. I don't know what we're going to do. But, I saw a clip on Facebook, or I think it was Facebook, social media again. Well, it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. I love it.
Of a clip of Pastor Stephen Furtick from Elevation, and I was just really convicted by what I had heard, because it was, I have my husband tell me pray about things, and I just happened to see this. Why would some person I had worked with before shared it, I believe, and it was okay. I just started crying because I couldn't understand what was happening. And so then I started checking them out because I wanted to see what it was about. They're in North Carolina and I'm in Jersey, so that's not going to happen. So, but they have it online. So let me check it out online. I have a passion for the online platform. So I'm watching it, and, I remember it was May 21st. I remember the day distinctly because I just had boxes surrounding me, and we're just packing to go. We didn't know where we were going to go. But I said, okay, I'm going to click a button. It says, give your life to Jesus. Okay. I clicked the button. What happens now? What? I had no idea. So I continued to go on my week of just cleaning out drawers and just, thinking, where are my kids going to go? You can imagine what's going through my mind at that point. And like it says, I thought it was me. I'm thinking, well, I'm clearly the problem here. So I did everything you could think of to make myself leave this earth, not just that first time, but a second time. Because I had just had enough. I was even willing to leave 4 kids and a husband who loved me, and God had blessed me with those people. But I just said, nope, I can't do this anymore. But because I clicked that button, that person, Cece, had called me. And when I asked her name, she said, my name is Cece. I said, what is that short for? She said, Cecilia. And if any of you know me, my eldest daughter's name is Cecilia. So it was just a moment of just I fell on my knees talking to her, and she prayed with me, and she had no idea who I was. I was on a list of people just for her to call. And it was a moment of such clarity for me that, okay, God, I hear you. I am supposed to be here now. There's something bigger that you have for me. We're going to lose our house. We're going to lose everything, but I have no idea what to do, but I know that you're here, and I know that you're listening. So we humbled ourselves, and we went into a Target parking lot. By this time, my mom had come back from overseas, and we asked my mom, who's now living in Texas, could we stay with you for a little while? Because we can't save our home. Absolutely. So we packed everything that we could into our truck and drove, I don't know how many days it was. It was a lot of days to Texas, and we finally got there, and my mom, that strained relationship that we had, that resentment that I felt, she was at the end of the driveway just waving at us, so excited that we were there, and she had all new beds and everything for us, a room for us. It was just an overwhelming feeling for me that not only did God take so many things away from us, but now he's given me a place to restore a relationship with my mom. So we were there about a week, and my husband gets a phone call of a job he had applied for and interviewed for months prior with the state of New Jersey, asking him, would you like the job? So we had to go to Texas to get a Jersey job. So, that's God, I don't know. But we still remained there for several weeks later because he didn't start until August, and we're probably in July. And it was the most peaceful time of my life. I had nothing, but all of our needs were provided for. All of our bills were paid. My mom took care of everything because God worked through her in order to take care of us. So we planned to drive back, and I took a stop at Elevation on a Saturday on our way back to New Jersey. And I got baptized because I said, okay, I'm gonna walk this walk, and I'm gonna do it proudly. And my husband started his new job that Monday. And within 2 weeks of that, we had a new home, a place to live, and God had restored everything. But we walked into this house, and I said, there's no way that God could give me this. There's no way. Like, no, I was expecting, like, not that. It was, I said, it's got a fireplace. Like, it's pretty nice. And, wow, the whole upstairs is the attic is all redone, and it's a huge room for Cecilia and Ava. I mean, it's just, do we really deserve this? But in my life, I never felt worthy enough to deserve anything, because I had, one, tried with my own effort, and two, it felt like, we question ourselves a lot, I think, that, do I really deserve this? Yes, you do. Yes, you do, and I'm living proof that you do. And I've taken the stance of not allowing my past to be a prison, because I did that for so long. So now I want to use it as a platform, because I feel like God has called me to do something bigger and help people in the struggle that they may be in, because I've been through a lot of struggles. So there's nothing I haven't been through that I can't talk someone through or talk someone off a ledge, because the ledge that I was on was so high. And to have someone, like yourself now, where I know that I can call and just say, hey, I'm having a really bad day today. Just help me through today, because even though God has restored us, I'm still broken. I still have a lot of scars. I'm a work in progress. I feel like every day I'm fighting for my life. And the enemy comes to me in so many ways, and I feel like that's because God kept me here. And he tried really hard, really, really hard to get me to leave this earth, because there's something that I'm supposed to do. And I stand on this Psalm 40, 1 through 3. I meditate on this daily. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. So that just resonates with me, because I have been in so many pits. I'm not in the palace yet, but every day I protect my mind, because that's the enemy's playground. And if I don't listen to worship music, if I don't listen to a sermon, if I don't go to my husband and pray, if I don't, call Ashley, or if I don't do something, it's an opening for destruction for me again. So I am not perfect. I am in no way fully restored. It's a daily restoration, and I am living that with intention now, whereas before I didn't know what that looked like. But now it's amazing how God can work in you, but then just through you. So I've seen that happen in ways that I can't even explain to you every day.
Amen. God always restores. And I think when Nicole and I talked and she shared her story, I thought, man, how cool that the relationships that had been broken, the addictions that had been dealt with, was all restored full circle. Elijah talked about that a couple weeks ago, that God always restores us like it's like a cup. He restores us to even, then he pours out overflowing. God doesn't just want to bring you back to what you had. God wasn't just like, Nicole, I'll give you another relationship. God gave her a relationship beyond what she had. He didn't just say, okay, now you have a house. You have beyond the house that you didn't have, because we serve a God of restoration. And I want to read to you from Amos today. And I was telling the first experience, I love the book of Amos, because a lot of times in the Old Testament, a lot of the prophets are special people, right? So it might be like somebody who's a son of, or somebody who's a king, and it's very easy for us to disjoin ourselves from that person and say, well, that person was used by God. Well, God spoke through them because of this. But Amos was a normal person. No one special. We know nothing about his family. All we know is that God spoke to him, and he spoke on behalf of God, and he simply obeyed. And in the book of Amos, he's talking to the Israelites, and the Israelites at that time, like Nicole said, had taken things into their own hands. And so they were beginning to worship idols, and it's like sometimes we work and work and work, and we think we can do enough, and we can repair enough, and we can get involved enough, and we can give enough, and we can do this and do that enough. But I think the biggest thing is that we don't work for a place of restoration. We work in a place of restoration. We serve a God of restoration. And so in Amos, he's sharing all this about the Israelites. And it's kind of like a doomsday prepper kind of book, honestly, if you read it. When I was reading it, I was like, whew, like that is like, I'm so glad he's not talking to me right now. Like, this is crazy. But in the last 2 verses of the entire book, in Amos 9, and it says, I'll start in verse 13, but in 13 it says, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when the reaper will be overtaken by the plowman and the planter by the one treading grapes. New wine will drip from the mountains and flow from all the hills. Then I want you to hear this. In verse 14 it says, I will bring back my exiled people Israel. They will rebuild the ruined cities and live in them. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will make gardens and eat their fruit. I will plant Israel in their own land, never again to be uprooted from the land I have given them. God will bring back his exiled people, and they'll build cities and they'll live in cities, and they'll plant gardens, and then they'll reap from the garden. And you know, when we first moved into our house, it was 4 years ago, and we moved in November, and so it was like just death, right? Because it's like fall and everything's gross, and our house had been sitting vacant for about 6 months. The couple before us had moved out, and so it was sitting vacant. And so when I moved in, I'm like the kind of person that, like, you know, there's 24 hours in a day. I will work 22 hours to like get everything caught up, and then I just want to live life. Like, that's just how I run. And so I said to Elijah, all right, we have 3 days until a Monday, and the borough's gonna come through and get all the extra like limbs and everything, roots and everything you put out on the street. They come through and get it and chop it into mulch. So I'm like, okay, we have 3 days until the borough comes through. Let's tear everything out. And so Elijah and I go out there, and I mean, like, it has like a fence around the yard, and it's just covered in like all these tree limbs, and there's dead bushes, and I'm like, this is terrible, like, but it's been vacant, whatever. So I'm just tearing it up. I'm ripping out roots. I'm like, we got a pile. Well, all the neighbors are just like looking at us like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, man, they're just impressed that we're cleaning the place up. Like, they must just be so excited for us. And so we're getting everything out. And we had these 3 trees in between our houses, these 3 fruit trees. I didn't know they were fruit trees at the time. And again, they looked dead. And so I'm going out and I'm like, get rid of the trees. Like, who put 3 random trees in the middle of our yard? This is so crazy. And my neighbor is the sweetest lady you've ever met in your life. And she's from Mississippi. And she comes over, she's like, now, honey, I don't know what you're doing. She was like, now, you know those are fruit trees. And I was like, wait, what? Fruit trees? And she was like, yeah, I saw you cutting down everything else. And I was like, wait, what was it that I took down? Like all the branches? She was like, honey, those were the Concord grapes that they planted when they built the house. And I was like, oh my word, no. And it was a strawberry patch, and it was a blueberry and blackberry bush. And I'm like, I mean, I tore everything out, can I tell you? And I was like, oh my word, I had no idea. And the neighbor kids come over, they're like, this is our favorite house with the fruit. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm the new neighbor. And so we rip everything out. But can I caution you in this? In some seasons, things look dead that are going to spring new life. And Elijah talked about this a couple weeks ago. We serve a God of seasons, right? There's winter, and then there's spring, and then there's summer, and then there's fall. There's always seasons. And I don't know what season you're in today, but it might look like it's death, but it might not be death. It may be something that's going to spring life in the springtime. And once we got these trees and we plant these fruit trees, or we start taking care of them, and I was like, the first year I said to her, so I leave them, right, from November to summer, and I'm like, well, where's the fruit? There's nothing on them. Like, I think that they're dead. And she was like, no, Ashley, like, did you take care of them? And I was like, what? Like, you have to take care of fruit trees? I obviously was not a great homeowner. And I was like, oh, you have to do something with them? And she's like, oh yeah, you have to do this. So of course I go like fruit trees for dummies on Google. And I'm like, how do you take care of this? Buying books, going to Lowe's. Like, I need things that aren't chemicals, and I'm trying to figure this out. But can I tell you that when we prepped the fruit trees it's amazing in July when we get peaches and when we get to make fresh peach pie and peach crisp and all sorts of things, but it's daily work. It wasn't working for the fruit trees, it's working in them. And I think that's what God wants to speak today is we don't have to work for his restoration. You don't have to do enough good for God to come and restore you and put you back together and give you purpose and give you life, but you have to work in that restoration. It's like Nicole said, tragedy, we don't stop encountering tragedy. We just walk differently through that tragedy. And so if you would stand with me today as we go into singing, and the worship team's going to sing this song, You Always Restore, because I believe with every ounce of my being that we serve a God who restores, and he wants to restore us today. And I don't know if for you that's a restoration of a relationship. I don't know if that's a restoration in your heart. I don't know if that's a restoration in your mind. But in the scripture it says that we're to take thoughts captive. It's not just taking the bad thoughts captive, though that is something. We take them captive and we get rid of them. We say, no, I'm not this. No, that's not going to define me, like Nicole said. But what we do is we also take thoughts and we bring them into our mind. And we read our scripture and we surround ourselves with a godly community that says you are chosen. We get around a Father who says you are loved and I have a purpose for you and you were meant more and I want to use you for this and I'm opening this door for that. And we begin to take those thoughts captive. No longer am I not equipped or I can't believe it, but it's, yes, God, I'm believing this and I'm walking in this. And today I believe God wants to restore in this place, that when we walk out as a church, that we're able to give hope and love and joy to the streets that we're going to walk on.
Hey, I'm Pastor Elijah, and this is my wife, Ashley, and we hope that this message inspired and encouraged you. Our heart with Change is to plant life-giving campuses all across the greater Philadelphia area and beyond. We believe that the church should be the place where people are coming alive to their purpose and living out why God called them here. Our vision statement is we are living out our purpose so that others can find theirs. And we feel like when Jesus changes and rocks your world, you come alive to the reason you're here. God gets involved in what you're doing. So we would love for you to pray about being a part of that vision.
There are a few ways you can get plugged in here at Change and begin coming alive to your purpose. The first is through community, and we believe that God called us to do life together. And so if you're in the Philadelphia area, we would love to have you come out to one of our weekend experiences or get involved in a change group throughout the week. If you're at a distance maybe and you're not able to be here in person, we would encourage you get involved in the online community. Start a watch party with your neighbors, your coworkers, your family, maybe some friends that want to get together. But we believe that God called us to do life together. And so we would encourage you, find your circle that can surround you and walk through life with you and begin to do life together. The second way to get involved is to join the Dream Team and become a part of what God is doing. If you're local in Philadelphia, we meet every other Sunday after Change for Belong. You can hear more about the vision and values of the church and find where you want to get plugged in. But even if you're not local, we have an online Dream Team. We would love to have you go through Belong online, and you can get plugged in as a host. You can get plugged into the creative team. If you're local, you can become a part of the guest experience team with our children. There's a place for everyone. We say all the time at Change that being a part of the Dream Team is not about filling a position, but fulfilling your purpose. And so we would love to walk alongside of you and find your purpose as you begin to come alive to that, and then what God does in and through you. The third way to get involved at Change is to pray about financially partnering with us in the vision that God has called Change to. We've seen so many incredible things happen, and we believe that the best is yet to come. And so we would ask, if you've been blessed by the ministry of Change, that you would pray about financially partnering with us. We say all the time, it's not about equal giving, but about equal sacrifice. And so we don't know what God's calling you to do with your time, talent, and treasure, but we do believe that generosity is going to pave the way for us to see city transformation.
Hey, we are seeing God move in some incredible ways. We're seeing miracles happen, healings take place, signs and wonders are happening every day. And we just thank God for what He's doing, but we pray that God would do that also in your life as well. Everything you put your hand to, everything you're getting involved in, that God sparks something great that only He can do in the supernatural. So take this as your personal invite. Come out and experience what God is doing in Change. experience His presence in a real way. Go online, plan your visit, and come be a part of the community. But before you even come, just know our team is praying and preparing a place for you.